Good afternoon, Dion McCormick here. Thank you for your patience. I know we're 2 minutes behind. We have a really interesting kind of demonstration on the data element in the control bar that will bring a whole new level of interactivity for your users. It's really you're gonna love it once you use it there, and it'll really open up a whole bunch of different things you can do with it. It's pretty exciting there. In the meantime, do open up your questions area of your go to webinar control panel, enter any questions that you have from our last session, and during my session, please don't hesitate to put questions in there. Dave will be monitoring that closely. Also, we highly recommend that you send questions ahead of time. You can send them at guides@alphasoftware, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com, and that way we have them queued up and we can make sure to address them there as we go through it. And we get questions. Sometimes we can just immediately address them for people, and other times we include them into our webinar. But our goal is to really help you solve open questions so you can be successful. So that said, what I'd like to do next is I'm going to go ahead and continue our exploration of the control bar. As I mentioned a little bit ago, we're going to talk about the data element today, and then we'll be having one more session. We'll talk about what are called disclosures next on the next session. With that, Dave, just a real quick process check. Coming through okay? Sounding okay there?
It sure is.
Okay, great. So, we've been exploring the new control bar. That's a 4.3 release feature, a very, very powerful and rich one. We've already covered a couple elements of the control bar, and the first was the concept of layouts, the ability for you to have multiple layouts on a screen. And I want to do a quick follow-up on a question there after I go through my data piece about layouts. So there was a really good comment made by an individual regarding that. But today what we're going to do is focus on what we call the data element, or data capability of Alpha. And to kind of explain it up front is that, as we talked about, control bars are very powerful. At the top of your mobile device, you have this area that can help you give contextual information, both provide buttons and commands to the user to do something, but also we can provide contextual information, i.e., what are we working on in this case? Or for instance, returning a results, or as I'll show you in a few minutes, what record am I working on from there? So the idea behind that is that you can, in the control bar, put data elements, which is our pieces of text, that can be modified on the fly. And when they're modified, they can provide better, more relevant information to the user. And therefore, you can, again, really make this control bar area very useful. Don't clutter your bottom area with information that you can put up there, and really make it easier for the person to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go into the Alpha development environment and add, with our sample, and add some data elements and walk you through the process of what a data element is, how to add it to your system, and then more importantly is how to modify it on the fly. And I'm going to conclude with a way to show how you can actually, on a list control, when you go from a list control to a detail view, you can actually show the information about what you're editing. It really is, and I think it's something that you'll use often because it's a really natural use of the data element. So I'm going to jump over in my development environment here, and for people who are new, and we thank you for joining us, this is the Alpha development environment, and I have already curated a UX component, that's our form component, and I selected the control bar with tab buttons panel, template. And so therefore, right out of the gate, I have some pre-made control bars. I'll go ahead and here. I've already done a little coloring there. We've got a menu up here. We've got a control bar up here, and then we have down here some buttons. And as I click those buttons, the panel information changes here. The content changes as I go through there. And that's all basically part of the default template that I built. And I use this one as a good base point because then I can start modifying it essentially immediately. So let's first talk about the control bar management environment, or Genie. So last time we talked about items. Items are different things such as buttons, text. You can also put in text fields, etc. We also last time talked about actions. These actions, when you associate actions to items, thus when you click or interact with an item, it triggers an action. And that was an important concept, is that the behaviors of things are dictated by actions, and then we associate those actions with control bar items. Then we also talked about the control bar layout, the ability for you to have more than one control bar or layout in your system. So therefore, if you have different modes, different contexts which people are using your app, like you have the first home page, like in my case we had a login page, and then from there we went to where we had a detail page. You may want to lay out that a little differently and show a different layout. So last time we talked about how the ability for you to create multiple layouts and then within multiple layouts dynamically set them so they show or hide based on what situation you're in. But what I want to talk about today is that you don't necessarily, like for instance, let's take an example here. We have a basic layout where you have a menu item and then some text right here. And you would think, well, okay, I want to have kind of the same structure, but I want to have the text different. I might have to create a new layout. Well, the data element addresses that. So let's go ahead and walk you through how I would adjust this so I can, on the fly, change this header from a piece of static text to a piece of dynamic text. So let's first look at the structure of this. You'll see in here we have the menu. This is my layout. Here's my menu, and in the middle is HTML1. So the HTML1 is this little piece of static text called My App. And so I'm going to go back here to Items, and you'll see we have an item here called HTML1. And you'll notice here that we just have a piece of static text. So if I change that to Webinar as the static text, and I go back to the control bar layout, and I refresh this, you'll notice that the HTML1 is just putting whatever static text is there, which is nice. So I could create several different pieces of static text and have them on my toolbar. But what I'd rather do is turn that static piece of text into something dynamic. So the way we do that is the first step is we need to go to the Data tab. And the Data tab, think of it as a set of variables or a set of data elements that we are going to have available in our control bar. So I'm going to go ahead and add a panel or a data item, and I'm going to call this header, let's call it header text. Now, very important, I like to note that the control bar uses a lot of JavaScript and how it works, so you want to remember that it's very case sensitive, and we're using camel case here, but just take care when to use a consistent way of naming all of your items there. And I'm going to put in what's called a default value. So I've got a piece of data here, and I'm going to put in the default value, and I'm going to call it Cool Webinar. And this is just the initial value for this data element there. So now I've got this data element here called Cool Webinar. Now what I can do is I'm going to go to Items here, and I'm going to go to my HTML1. And you'll notice currently it is showing static text right here. So I just typed in some static text right here. But what I'd like to be able to do is in HTML1, I want it to actually display a data item. So the way I do that is I go to select the control bar item. I click on the ellipsis button here, and it's shown the HTML editor. And you'll notice I could just type anything I want in here, but check out what's on the left-hand side. Any data element I want, I've now will show up here, and I might have more than one. So what I can do is get rid of that, double-click header text, and you'll notice that it inserted in here the curly bracket and my header text. And so what's going to happen is whenever this piece of HTML is shown in the control bar, the system will automatically go find the header text data element and replace this with that. So let's go ahead and show that. So I've set up my data element called header text. I've changed my HTML from fixed to now a dynamic HTML. And then I'm going to go to my control bar layout, and notice what's happened. It immediately picked up and put in here a Cool Webinar. So let me make sure, let me do a refresh there. Because see, notice in my layout, I just put HTML in the middle. So it's going to say, okay, I'm rendering this control bar. I want to put HTML right here in the middle. And then what I want to do is when I render the HTML, I'm going to go look up that data element. So for instance, if I go back to data here, and I go to this value right here, and I change the default value to very Cool Webinar, and I go back to my layout here, you'll notice that it automatically picked up that default value. Now, obviously, the default value is a static text, so big wow. You know, the power becomes the following, and I'm going to show you that next, is that when you are running, you can change the value of this data at any time, and refresh the control bar, and it will automatically update it with that new piece of data. So that's what I'm going to show next. So real quick, is there's an element called data. Think of it as a placeholder or a variable where you can put something in there, in this case some text. Then what I did is I went to my item here and pointed it to that data. And this could be sophisticated. You could actually have 2 or 3 data elements in here and put them in there. You could do some very exciting things with it. And then I just put that item on the screen, and it's going to take care of doing the rendering from there. So let's go ahead and go into our environment here. I'll do a working preview right here. You'll see in my working preview that now I have my static text here, very cool webinar here, because I haven't changed it. And if I go to any other panel, it's just going to keep that at top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button here that's going to change the value of this here. So that means on the fly. And I'm going to use a button, but you can use it in control. And the next step we'll go is show you how you can use a list to do that. So I'm going to go back into my design here. I'm going to go to panel card number 1. That's my first panel card. And I'm going to add a button here. Okay. And I'm going to go into this button, and I'm going to call it modify control bar data. Okay. So I'm going to go double click this and open it up. I could go ahead and paste in some JavaScript, and I'll show you that in a moment, but I wanted to show you also is that in the we have in action JavaScript, we can click add new action, and we have list control actions. And so these are very similar to the actions you've seen before, much like panels, etc. So the action I want to do is here. Oops, I hit the list one, I think. I'm sorry. Let me add a new action. Let's go control bar. There we go. That's the one I want. So the action I want to do is you see we have some basic atoms here. You can refresh the control bar. You can set the active bar. You can update control bar data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the update control bar data action to modify that text, that data in my control bar. So I'm going to select update control bar data. It's going to ask me which control bar, because in this case I have 2 control bars on there. So we want to use control bar number 1, which is at top. Now it's asking me, well, which data variables to update? So what do you want me to update? Because you could have multiple variables in the control bar. And when I clicked here, you'll notice that it brought up a list. In this case, we only have one thing of header text. And now, what do we want to do for the values? I'm just going to say, and this is a JavaScript expression. So click here, you'll notice we have an example. So in this case, we can put in static text, which is what I'm going to do. But we'll show you in a few moments. What's great is you can actually get a value of something on your user interface and use that to update the control bar. And we'll do that next. So let's go ahead and say that. And I'm going to say the webinar. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is update my control bar data, update, on control bar 1, I selected header text, and then it's telling me, well, okay, how do you want me to set? And in this case, I'm setting it to a piece of static text called here. So I'm going to go OK, click OK. So now I have my control bar action, so let's go ahead and check it out. So now when I go into my working preview, you'll note it picks up the default value for that header and shows it here. Come on. Sorry, as a demo. I'm checking my preview. Oh, interesting. Must be a little gotcha there on there. I'll have to find out. I am on a pre-release, everybody, so bear with me. It may be something on my side. Let me just make sure I've put that in there. Yeah, let's see. Data name equals Fred. Okay. Let me get rid of this. Maybe.
Semicolon.
Yeah, sorry, I made an assumption that this is a. So let me get rid of that semicolon there. I'm so used to now, like, gotta put a semicolon and everything. That might have been it there. So let me see this.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you're right. That's why Dave gets paid the big bucks. He knows how to do this stuff. So you'll see that in this case, it's picked up that default value. So it's not showing that new data value. Now I have a new button here called Modify Control Bar Data, and I'm going to click that. And you'll notice, boom, voila, I have now changed the text from the default to the on the fly built into this. And that's kind of hard coded there. So not, but you'll see how easy it is that basically we have the action JavaScript in here. Now, what we can do, as always, I like to demonstrate this, is that we have built this using our action JavaScript. And that works great. Highly recommend, always do that when you start out. But we can click here and say View JavaScript, and you'll notice this is the actual JavaScript that was created. And so you'll notice it's getting a pointer to the object, it's setting the, and then it's doing an update value there. So it's a little more complicated than just pointing and clicking. But the nice thing now is I could just copy this and paste it onto something else and have the ability to change that from there. So I always like to show you that we never hide anything, that we have the easy way to do it here, but once you're a little more experienced, feel free to click this View JavaScript, and then it will show you the exact JavaScript, and you're welcome to grab this JavaScript, paste it, and use it anywhere else you want and modify it to your heart's content. So that's how to do there. Now, that's not super, well, it could be valuable. When you click a button, go to a new page, you want to show I'm on the edit page, etc. But let's make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to panel card number 1. And what I want to do is I'm going to put in a list control. And that list control is going to have a detail view on panel card 2. And what I want to be able to do is when the user clicks on an item in the list control, I want it to then navigate to the panel card number 2 and at the same time set the control bar to be a value in that list. So for instance, if I clicked on John Doe in the list, I want to go to the detail view and see John Doe's name up at the top. That way contextually I know and I'm telling the user what I've done from there. So I'm going to go ahead and take these right now. And by the way, I'm going to move them out of the way. I'm going to put them on panel card number 4. And a quick and dirty way to do that, just to let you know, is I've selected the controls I'd like to move. And here, I'm going to click Move to Selected Location. And I go to panel card number 4, and it moves all of those controls here. I could have used the up and down arrows, but it takes a little bit more time. So I'm going to go through this fairly quick, but I'm going to go ahead and go to panel card number 1. I'm going to add a list control. I'm going to call this List of Customers, and you may have seen this before. I'm going to use our quick setup genie built into it to set up the list control. So first thing it's doing is asking me for a connection string. That's going to tell me what database I'm going to. So I've pointed it to my database now. Now what I'm doing is telling it the method is fields from a table. I'm going to click table name here. I'll click customers. You'll notice when I click that, it called the database and gave me a list of available tables and views. Now I'm going to go to my field list, and to make this simple, I'm just going to get in customer ID and a few things like this. And I'm not going to set a filter in order. I do want a detail view because I want to put that detail view on the second page. I want it to build it for me. And then if I wanted to, I could set it up for disconnected operation. Don't really need that for this demonstration, so I'll leave that be. So I click OK. So now you'll notice, and this is for people who are new, we've auto-generated a set of controls. The first control is my list of customers, and then it's created a container with a set of controls for each one of my detail view items and my buttons here. And I'm going to just use that. I'm going to move that down into panel card 2. So give it a moment there. Okay. So now the only thing I have in my first panel card is this list, and I'm going to go over here and tell it to fill the container. So that way it fills the container. Now I'm going to do one other real quick thing here because I want to make it look like nicely on a mobile package. So I'm going to go ahead and open list of customers. I'm going to go to the list properties, and I'm going to select the layout type to be freeform. And then the list layout here, I'm going to go to my list layout, select a predefined template, and select, say, just level 1, level 2. And level 1 is going to be the company name, and level 2 will be the contact name. As you can see, it's just creating some nice looking little there. And so I can click OK. So that last 2 steps of making this fill the whole panel, and secondly, nice, you'll see when I display the records on the first page, I'll go ahead and show you that in a moment. Dun, 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 dun. You'll see now I've got a nice looking list of customers. I can move them up, swipe them, etc., do those there. You'll notice when I click here, it highlights that row, but nothing is happening. If I go to the second panel card, you'll see that it has automatically updated those detail views because the detail view is associated with the list control, and it automatically updates those pieces there. So as I select an item, it goes from here. So now what I would like it to do is when I click this button, I want it to do two things. First is I want it to automatically show me this. But second, more importantly, is I want to take this company name here and I want to put it up here in the header so that when I'm on this now, I see that company name. Thus, I can lay my screen out a little nicer and just they'll know, they'll have a visual confirmation. So let's go back into design. And what I'm going to do is to do this simply, there's two ways I could do it. And let me show you kind of the first method, which is I could go into list of customers. I could go to the list properties, and then I could go here to the onClick event. So this is the, and it's also equivalent to the onPress, so that when someone clicks on something, it's going to run the action in there. But I'm going to show you a cool way you can approach this. I could actually open this up and start building, just typing in JavaScript, but let's do this from here. So, well, I'll just go ahead and show you how to do that. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go to my list of properties, and I'm going to go to my onClick event. Okay, so you'll notice here's my onClick event, and here's some action JavaScript. I could create action JavaScript, but what I've done is I've gone ahead and already done that, and I've got some. So I'm just going to grab that out of here and copy and bring that over here and show you how to do it. So once you've, the trick I used is I used action JavaScript to do it first, and then I went in and then copied that from there. So what we want to do here is the first thing we want to do is we need to get a pointer to our control bar. So when this licks, when the person clicks on it, the first thing it's going to do is grab a pointer to the control bar because we're going to tell the control bar to update something on there. The next thing I want to do is I want to get the actual value that I want to do it. So I'm going to use a little piece of JavaScript here that says create a new variable and get the value of, and I'm going to go ahead and right click on here, and I'm going to click on list of customers, company name. Okay, so let me show you, let me walk through that a little bit more. This is what's called a piece of built-in JavaScript that Alpha has. It's called get value, and what I do is I click right here, click a space, and you'll notice that it shows a little help box, and more importantly, in here it has a blackened area here. So I'm going to right click on that, and this is going to show me all the different fields on there. So I could actually select the list itself and whatever the value of that list will be there. I could actually even point it to one of the fields on there. But what I want to do is you'll notice in here, it also says I can actually grab the current column ID, name, or whatever from my list of customers. So I want to get company name there. So what's going to happen is when this runs, it's going to look at what is the selected row on the list, and it's going to grab the company name and put it in to new value. And now what we want to do is the third part of it is now that we have a pointer to our control bar, we have the value we want to set. We now want to also update the control bar. This is the code for that. So the first item right here is going to be the name of the data object that I created called header text. And then the second part is what value do I want to set that value there. Now to kind of see that, I can click here. Actually, I can click down here to method to get that information here. So now I'm going to click OK. So just a quick recap, get a pointer to the control bar. I'm going to get the value there from the list of the company name, and then I'm going to update that data in the header. Now I need to do one other thing, and that's the following, is I'm going to go ahead and do dialog.object.panel set active, which you've seen before, to panel card number 2. So what it's going to do is update the header, and then this little piece of code is going to take me to there. Now all of this could be built through action JavaScript, but I decided to do it in JavaScript just to make it succinct for today's meeting there. So now we have that done. We can go in and test that out. So we'll go into working preview. Take a moment to update there. So I click on this one here and check it out. It did two things. It came here and it checked the header to there. Let me go back. Let me select Thomas Hardy around the horn. Notice the header now shows around the horn, and it's pointing to the right object, and I'm right test there. So I can just go through. So now you can essentially, with that little piece of JavaScript, you can set the value of this up top to anything you want. And it's just not limited to certain values. You could do action JavaScript callback, or you could do manipulations. There's many, many things you could do within it there. So just a real quick recap, and then I want to open it for questions, is that in my control bar, I have these things called data. And think of it as variables, as items. And on the fly, I create a default value for them. But also within it, I have the ability to change that on the fly. Now, the important thing is I have an item here, and when I built that item, instead of static text, I put in my placeholder from my data so that whenever this runs and displays, the system will automatically look that up and put that in there from that standpoint there. On my control bar layout, you'll notice that that HTML1 item is right here. And then what I do is, in my first example, I just used a control bar action to change it to a hard-coded value from one hard-coded value to another. And we have, remember, there's a number of different control bars. You can refresh them, you can set the active one, you can kind of play with that there. But then for our more extensive, what we did is that on the list of customers, when the person clicked on a row, we got a pointer to the control bar. We grabbed the value of the list, company name in the list, the current one. We updated that data element to new value. When you do this, by the way, it does two things actually. It updates that data value, and you'll notice it refreshed the control bar because I've set the data value, but you have to refresh it. The nice thing is that this command right here will do both of them at the same time. And then last but not least, I navigate to my panel card number 2, and voila, we now have a control bar, data-driven, that allows you to dynamically on the fly update the header to give the person a little bit of contextual framework of where they're at. So if I click on around the horn, I see around the horn. If I go back and click on, say, Blower, we see it here. So I'm going to stop at this point. That's kind of my exploration of data. I'm going to go ahead and give it back to Dave for any kind of questions you might have. And then, Dave, take it away.
All right, then.
Okay.
So just looking through the questions, we have some that are related to the control bar and some that are just general questions.
Oh, great.
Both of them today. So let's start with the control bar one. A person asked, and I remember this actually from last week. We didn't get to it.
Yes.
Well, this week, can the control bar have notification badge icons that update, say, on the count number or something like that?
Yes. And the reason you can do that is the following, is that if I go into my control bar here, and we kind of touched on it before, and actually let's do this. Do you mind if I do a little sample real quick?
Let's do it.
Okay. So what's the best way? The way we can do it real quick, actually, just kind of cover it there, is that this is HTML. So any HTML can be put in there. So the ability, therefore, is you can put your badge in there as HTML, and then on the fly, update your header text to have that HTML. And I think to do it justice, I'll try and create a little sample before next week or before our next meeting. But the way you can do it is, again, this is all HTML. So I could literally put in here B for bold and /B, or that would make this bolded, or I could put in an image reference and it put in there. But I think the one we like the most, and let's go ahead and just try something real quick. Let me go let's go to the button here. I'm going to go ahead and go to text, image followed by text. I'm going to go ahead and create, let's go ahead, I'm going to grab an SVG icon here, just something. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And so SVG icon. So I'd have to put the image tag in there. I'm not sure how to do that. Let me do it justice, is that the idea behind this is now in my control bar header here, I can put, oops, it didn't pick it up, but I can put that image reference here so that my header text, and then on the fly, I could change that SVG icon from one to another. So let me do that, and then I can send it as a link that you can send out to everybody so they can see exactly how it's done, because I want to make sure it's done properly.
That would be cool. I think it's a great request because that's something that people want.
Yeah.
I see in a lot of applications. It would be neat to add that.
Yeah, let me do that, and I promise everybody, you won't have to wait for our next session. What I'll do is I'll put together a little sample, a standalone UX control, get it over, and he can ship it out to everybody or put it up on the blog to show it there, and we'll get that done ASAP. But that's a great question, and I wish I had thought of it ahead of time. I would have made for a more interesting presentation. So.
All right, excellent. We'll look forward to that. I've had a couple people ask me this week, and I probably should have let you know ahead of time because I know it's always good to let you know ahead of time. But the whole notion of showing master detail type data, in other words, relational type data, in a either a form view control or in a view box.
Ah.
Can be done, or is it something we should go and research and come back to?
Yes, actually there is, and I think I'm going to cheat here. Alpha 5. Let's see, I saw a little note on this. I haven't done it myself, but let me go to pre-release notes. And okay, there's actually an article on our pre-release notes. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and go into the chat area, and I'm pasting it here. Okay, so there's a link in your chat area there. And when you get to that link, search for master. And right here we have using a form view control to edit data in a list control, master detail forms. So this is how you would use a form view control to do that. Also, you'll notice in here there's a second walkthrough, and by the way, this is really cool because it creates and allows you the components. You don't have to try and recreate it. But we also have a second tutorial where we build a mobile master detail form using the list control, form view, and control bar. So this is these videos are really worthwhile watching because they're a great design pattern for and it should hopefully answer the questions that have been posed to you by walking through there. And you'll see it's a multi-part video, including the component. And in fact, in here, it's built on top of an assumed database structure. There's a script here you can download to create that database on your MySQL or SQL Server or wherever you want it to be. So go to that link I sent in the chat bar, and then scroll down. It's about halfway down or so. But if you search for the term master in your browser, it will take you to the first video here. And if you walk through those, that should give you a lot of good feel for how to put that together.
Excellent, thank you. Back to a control bar question. The question is, can you have different layouts based on the user who's signing in?
Great question, and the answer is yes, you can. When you build a control bar, you can, when I build a control bar layout, on the fly, as we showed last week, we could change the control bar on the fly. So when the user logs in, we can say use control bar number 1 or 2 or whatever layout it happens to be. So you could create multiple control bars, and one for different user types like a manager, and then what you can do is using the command, and let me see, and let me go ahead and open up my oh, that's control bar data. Let me look here. There we go. In my demo from last week, we had a button here, and we had we just use this action JavaScript to set the active control bar layout to be a specific control bar. So in this case, I have 2 primary control bars in a menu. And what you can do is, if I just go ahead and say, okay, view that, what you can do is, when the person logs in, just have a little JavaScript function that does a select function saying, if the user is a manager, then show out layout number 2. If it is a user, show layout number 3. And the way you can do that, by the way, is built into the client-side events you have on login. Is it on this one? Yep. After login, right here, you can put that JavaScript right in here. So what happens is when the person logs in, it's going to run this script, and in there you can look and identify who the person is, from their login, and then use that script to show the active layout at that point in time.
Terrific. So going over to web applications for a moment, the person has a question here about using the action JavaScript action to open up a PDF and display it in a PDF viewer. And the question is, they would like to be able to, in JavaScript, actually define what PDF they should be pulling.
Okay, I'm sorry. Run that by me again. I apologize.
I'll do that again.
Yeah, no. Okay, I just want to wrap my head around it.
We'll start with web application. And
Gotcha.
when you're in web application, there is an action JavaScript action for opening up a PDF
yes.
viewer. And they want to know, how do I define, like dynamically define the file that should be opened up?
Very good point. Let me go ahead and add a button in here.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and explore that real quick. Okay, and my assumption, let's see, okay, so let's go to our click event. Let's go to add new action, type in PDF. You can do open an A5W, static HTML, blah, 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 in a pop-up window or div. So that's my assumption is the one they're using here, okay? So the page URL right here, you'll notice in here, I can click on that and I can navigate to a page in here. So what we want to do is click PDF document, because we're going to do that, and the file name right here, okay, so this is a fixed PDF here. That's a really good question. I guess this is it looks like, and I haven't used this in a long time, it's asking for an existing PDF. So here is probably how I would approach that, is instead of opening a PDF document, I would open a page URL here. Now, that page URL can be a internal, so you can set that on the fly kind of scenario. So what I would do is, instead of opening up a specific PDF, modern web browsers, what happens is that if you put the URL of the web browser to a PDF document on the server, it will serve up that PDF document to the user. So instead of explicitly saying PDF document, you can say navigate to a, it could be actually a current project, and then you would probably pass it as a variable. Wow, that's a really good question.
Right, I have a wacky approach. What if you said it was a PDF document and you gave it some name like, this is my PDF document, and then converted it into real JavaScript from action JavaScript?
Okay, let's try that. Yeah. I don't have a PDF file in here.
there's the challenge. Yeah.
There you go. Let me see if I have one sitting around. Where did I have it? Oh, I do have one. Okay. Probably have something in there. I think I have a PDF. I'm going to put that in there. So downloads. There's one. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to pick this. So I've got that PDF right there. Okay. What? There we go. Okay. I can set that and I'll go Windows here. Okay. So now let's view the JavaScript. So that,
it's been encoded, hasn't it?
yeah, it's going to be encoded in here. Let's see. I'm trying to see it. Yeah, there it is right here. So, let's see, there's no XBasic callback, so that's how it's working there. So what you would need to do is take, if you wanted to take that approach, Dave, you would copy this out, put it into a JavaScript function, and pass it this value.
That's got a parameter to it, yeah.
Yeah, that passes in this value here, so it's on the fly. And then what you could do is then in that JavaScript function there, you do it. The way I'm looking at it is that when we open up the page, what you can do is make the page URL the point to that PDF on the server. So my my document is now in the, let's say it's on the root of my application on the server. I can actually put in, you know, PDF. Oh, let's see. I can just say PDF 1, 2, 3, 4 dot PDF. Okay. So now that's the page URL. And so it's going to look up and look for that. But I wonder if it's going to screw up because it's a PDF. It's supposed to be an HTML page.
So while we've been working on this,
Let me see.
people have been writing in with some pretty good suggestions.
Oh, okay.
One person points out that if you take a look at some of the videos on how we do it with S3, there's a way of doing it that way. There's some
Oh, okay.
action on that. Another is that the file download action in Action Javascript might be one.
Great idea. Yeah, you could use the file download. The only thing is I think that does it as a download versus showing it in a page. That would be the only thing here.
Right. Right. Would it force the browser to do it, or would it still give the user a chance?
Yeah, that didn't seem to work. If you let's see. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to try one more thing real quick, so bear with me. I only want to spend 2 more minutes on this. Yeah, the file download, the only downside is it starts it as a download versus actually displaying it on the screen. So if the individual wants to display it on the screen. So I'm going to go into my demonstration.
While you're doing that, I'm going to paste a video link in on YouTube that Bob Moore did for displaying PDFs, which might be helpful in this case.
Yeah, thank you. You got some good stumpers today. I really appreciate that.
Fortunately, the audience is here to help us out. This is great.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I always liked, there was the book out there a long time ago. It takes a village.
It does take a village.
It takes a village. But here's the deal. For us, it takes a village idiot to really make this stuff run. So, Okay, I'm trying to find that document I just uploaded. Where's my PDF file? There we are.
Someone else said that they used a hyperlink control that just gets the file path from a database.
Okay, let's call it invoice PDF. Okay, so I'm going to copy that real quick. Copy it. I'm going to go to my, and this is a topic for another day, but I'm going to go to my A5 web root, go into live preview so it's there, because it's going to be looking there. Okay, so now it's called invoice to PDF. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to call it invoice PDF.pdf. And then if this works, I'll walk you through how exactly. So save it. I'm going to do live preview. By the way, I put it in that live preview folder because it's looking for the file in that particular folder. And again, we can talk a little bit more about how live preview works on a future episode. So I'm just done here. Let me see if this works real quick. Bear with us. I think this will work. This will work from that. See if it works on this page here, since I'm going to be in the full browser. And if this doesn't work, we'll hold it here, go to the next question.
Yeah.
So I'll go here. There we go. Now, by the way, this opened up here. You'll notice this opened up here. It's in Lassie in there. Actually, what's kind of nice is I think if I do this in well, it's gone off into La La Land. Ooh, it doesn't like it. Did a little too much of what thing. So let me go ahead and get rid of this. Okay. Yeah, it's gone off there. So that's one method here. Let's go into design. So what I did is instead of opening it as a PDF document, I did it as a page URL. Now let's go ahead and look at the Action JavaScript. Yeah, it kind of uses the same thing. So you're kind of using the same thing as it's sort of doing the similar kind of process there. But what you could do in here, I wonder if you can make this dynamic by pointing at a value. I wonder if that is, yeah, we'll have to put a hold on here. I was thinking if you could make this a variable that's pointing to a field on the user interface, like, invoice or a PDF file name, then what you do is set the file name in there and then launch it from there. So we'll do that.
Great.
Okay.
And I've pasted in a bunch of links that people have sent in about videos that relate to that sort of.
Yeah, I'm going to figure it out. I'll let you know the easiest way to do that on our next
one. Here's a question. Someone's interested whether or not, and if so, how, you can use Python, the Python programming language with Alpha Anywhere.
Very good point. Yeah, Python has some amazing capabilities, especially with text manipulation, like munging through text files and stuff. I heard this stat that said Google is basically like 30 or 40% Python. Um, they kind of used it originally, and it's so effective at scanning large files and going, like, the crawlers pick the file and then they go in and extract data out of it. Python with regular expressions is really cool. What is powerful is, Python runs on the server, so it's running on the server. And Alpha has a whole bunch of basically XBasic commands that allow you to call programs on the server, just basically emit a command line on the server. So if I go to our handy dandy documentation site, alphasoftware.com/documentation, that Sarah is doing a fabulous job of improving daily. And I'm just going to go, like, I think it's called sysopen system functions, and maybe it's on that one there. Okay. Now that's on like HTTP and stuff. Let me go sys.open. Okay. Creating. Okay, there it is. Okay, and in fact, they just improved this recently. And if I go to the release notes, I think it's on here. Let's go. Okay, sys shell wait. That's the one you want to look for. And actually, they just improved it here. What sys shell wait does, and say that 3 times really fast, is it allows you to run basically a command line to Windows. So Python is a exe that runs on the Windows, and then you can say Python / and then it's the script you want to run. So what you can do is in your XBasic, you can use this sys shell wait to say, Python, and then give it the script name. And what it will do is it will run that Python. It'll wait till it's completed, and then in the background, Python could have munged some files, done whatever. So it's a bit of what you're really doing is basically calling a function on the Windows server from XBasic and using that. So that's the approach I would take, is that I would look at setting up my Python with my scripts and then using the sys shell wait. This is nice really quick is because it's going to wait till it completes, and then it's going to tell you whether it completed okay or with an error. So this is a kind of and it will actually say, hey, time out after a certain time. So if whatever reason your script fails, it's not going to sit there and wait for a day before telling you you have parameters there. But it's called sys shell wait. Here is an example of how to run it. Basically, you have the command, and then in here is what you would type normally on the Windows command line, CMD or a PowerShell, to run it. And then there's some other parameters in terms of how long it should wait before it says, okay, I'm throwing a timeout and I'm done from there. But that way you can integrate scripts running on the server side in Python, and those can be very powerful. I know you can do database updates, etc. And again, very powerful for doing like string and file manipulation. It's just a natural for that. Alpha can do probably similar things to Python. We have a very rich language that comes from a desktop metaphor, so we actually have a lot of built-in file manipulation stuff. But again, if you already have Python scripts, this would be an easy way for you to integrate them into your solution.
Right, and if you already knew Python over XBasic, you probably want to default to that as well. Sure.
Exactly, and Python's very efficient too. It's fast as all get out. So the neat thing about that also is that you're not using the Alpha application server to perform that. So therefore, you're kind of like handing it off. It can run in a different process on a different core on your server, do its thing, and then when it's done, then Alpha can take over. And the application server, is serving up pages to people who are hitting it. So if it's doing that and it's trying to do a whole bunch of background processing, you may see some performance things. So the other advantage of this methodology is to offload those kind of grunt work to, say, Python, and therefore Alpha can just be sitting there waiting for the next request from the people out in the field for their mobile apps or for their web apps.
Terrific. Another approach that you could consider is that I believe that Python can be used with .NET, so you can create a .NET assembly that's written in Python, and then Alpha can tie into that .NET assembly if you want
Right.
the more advanced approach. But I think that the sysshell wait might be perfect for many, many instances.
Yeah, especially if they're little baby scripts doing something, where it's only going to take a second for it to run on the server. You can do that from there. And don't forget, also Node.js. So we have full Node.js support. So if you're comfortable with doing server-side JavaScript, which can be very powerful, and there's a lot of the thing about Node.js is they have a huge amount of modules that allow you to connect to systems such as Dropbox and other kind of open systems. So there, you can use that like pre-built components in Node.js and then offload from AlphaX Basic over to that. So that's another alternative.
Terrific. So let me take a look. Oh, we have about 5 minutes. This might be something you can only answer sort of conceptually, but
Yeah.
it has to do with logins in mobile applications.
Okay.
The person has a mobile application, and they want it when the first logs in, the device will be assumed to be online, like the first time they ever load it. But then they want to have the ability for the person to use it offline, let's say for up to a week, without requiring them to do any special login to get into the application. So how would you go about that?
Okay. The method I would use is the following. And this was originally proposed by Jeff Bitson. He's done some work on that. Is that the Alpha can use what's called local storage. And local storage is a little piece, it's basically storage on the device. So for instance, on a mobile device, you have local storage. And local storage is persistent, meaning that it doesn't get wiped unless you wipe it either by taking the app off or modifying it yourself. And if I go to our handy dandy here, go to local storage, there's a lot of really good articles on this. So what that would do is the following, and you could even use client-side data cache, but I like there we go, persisting list. No, last one, bear with me. Persist data to local storage. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, send it over to you on here. It's a good article to have handy. Okay, so the idea behind local storage is that when the person logs in and they have a valid login, you could save in local storage their information and have like a time date stamp of of when they logged in. And then what you can do is you can put in the app there's two ways. One is you can have a timeout that it runs periodically and checks and says, okay, have I exceeded my time? Like if I'm allowing you to stay in for 5 days, I can have a little piece of JavaScript that says, okay, what is the date stored in local storage? Is it past my day? It is. Boom, log them out, send them to the panel to force them to log back in. If not, go ahead and just keep doing what you need to do. So you can use local storage as sort of a scratch pad to store the user information and also store when they logged in, and then you just put a little piece of JavaScript that will run periodically. And that could either be like when you go, when they navigate from one page to another, because the JavaScript is going to be extremely low overhead, meaning running that script will there'll be no perceptual time for the user themselves. So you could have it each time you go to a certain page that's used, like every time they look at the list controller or something like that, it does that there, or goes to a certain panel, it's going to check to see have they exceeded their logout time. And that's generally how you put it together. And this will show you information about persisting data to local storage, how to set them up, and how to even persist list data to local storage. This is a nice little article on how to use all that within there. There is also, this is kind of using our interface, there is also inside, let me go ahead and go in here, insert, let's go ahead and local storage. Okay. Thought we had a local UX. I did this year before last. There is a JavaScript command that's just a standard JavaScript command. JavaScript. Okay. Find it real quick. There we go. There we go. So local storage, and this is just, it's supported by HTML5. So it's local storage.setItem. So I could set the user information to the user data. Then I could have a second one that says local storage.setItem and put in login point or login time date and store that there. And then what you can do is to retrieve it, you basically just say, you can remove it from local storage, and you can also just grab it by referencing it as local storage and then the name that you submitted it under or saved it in there. And so therefore local storage is just, it's like a note, it's like a post-it note. You just say save this data in local storage, and then it's always available on that mobile device, and you can pull it out, look at who they are, look how long they've been logged in, then just use a panel set act, there's actually an alpha set logout in there. Log. You can do this command, dialog.object.logout, and what that will do is it will log them out of the application, and then on your UX, you have on the client-side events, you have, come on, there we go. After logout, you can say, panel set active, etc. So it takes them to the login page at that point in time. That would actually be dialog.object to that.
Excellent.
Okay, so that's the general philosophy. Use local storage for that, and then it's always going to be available. Nice thing is local storage is always available when you're offline, so you never have to worry about a server connection to be able to access that information.
Terrific. Well, Dion, thank you very much. We've come to the end of our time. I'd like to thank everyone who sent in questions today and who attended. If you have additional questions, go ahead and send them to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com. Also check our previous recordings at videos.alphasoftware.com. Now, next week is the holiday week for us, so we will not be coming to you live. However, we do have a special pre-recorded recording, which we will send you details about next week, and I think that you will enjoy watching it. Until then, I hope to see you at a future webinar. Take care, and goodbye.